My son looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Mom, if you really loved me, you'd sell this house tomorrow." I stared at him for a long time, and in that silence, I made a decision that would change everything. Let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Dorothy. I'm 74 years old. I've lived in the same house for 46 years. My husband Robert and I bought it in 1978, the year our son Kevin was born. It was a small three-bedroom colonial on a quiet street in eastern Pennsylvania. Nothing fancy. White shutters, a little garden out back, a porch where Robert and I used to drink coffee every single morning for 39 years. Until the morning he didn't wake up. Robert passed 5 years ago. Heart attack.
Silent. Quick.
No warning. One night, he kissed me on the forehead and said, "Good night." And that was the last word he ever spoke to me.
Good night.
After he died, this house became more than wood and walls. It became him. Every creak in the hallway, every stain on the kitchen counter, every scratch on the banister from when Kevin was a boy riding his toy trucks down the stairs. This house was my husband. This house was my life. And I never planned to leave it. Kevin was our only child. We gave that boy everything. Robert worked double shifts at the plant so Kevin could go to a good school. I worked part-time at the library and tutored kids in the evenings so we could save for his college fund. When Kevin got into Penn State, Robert cried. I had never seen that man cry before. Not once. But that day, he sat on this very porch and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and said, "We did it. Our boy's gonna have a better life." And for a while he did. Kevin graduated, got a decent job in finance, married a woman named Vanessa. They had 2 kids, my grandbabies, Lily and Marcus. For a few years, things were beautiful. Kevin would bring the kids over on Sundays and I'd make pot roast and pie, and we'd sit on that porch and watch the fireflies in summer. Those were the years that made everything worth it. But then something changed. It didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, the way rust eats through metal. Kevin stopped calling as much. The Sunday visits became monthly, then every few months, then holidays only. Vanessa barely spoke to me when they came. She'd sit on her phone the entire time, and if I asked her anything, she'd give me one-word answers like I was bothering her. One Thanksgiving, I spent 2 days cooking. Turkey, stuffing, sweet potatoes, 3 pies. They showed up 40 minutes late. Vanessa looked around my kitchen and said, "It smells old in here." She said it quietly, but I heard it. I heard every word. Kevin didn't correct her. He just shrugged and opened a beer. I told myself it was fine. Kids grow up. They get busy. They have their own lives. That's what parents do. We give, and then we let go. I accepted that. I made peace with the silence. I had my garden, my books, my church group. I was okay. Then, about 8 months ago, Kevin called me out of the blue.
Not on a holiday.
Not on my birthday. Just a random Tuesday night. And I was so happy. I actually smiled when I saw his name on my phone. I thought maybe he missed me. Maybe he wanted to visit. Maybe something had shifted. "Hey, Mom," he said. His voice was tight. Nervous. "Kevin, sweetheart, it's so good to hear from you," I said. There was a pause. A long one. And in that pause, I felt something cold settle into my chest. Because a mother knows. A mother always knows when something is wrong. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." "What is it, honey?" Another pause. Then he exhaled hard and said, "I'm in trouble, Mom. Financial trouble. Big trouble." He told me he had invested in some business venture with a friend. Some kind of real estate flipping scheme. He had borrowed money. A lot of money. $240,000.
The deal went bad.
The friend disappeared. And now Kevin was drowning in debt. His credit was destroyed. Vanessa was threatening to leave. He said he might lose the house. My heart broke for him. It truly did. I said, "Kevin, I'm so sorry. What can I do? I have some savings. I can help." I had about $32,000 in my savings account. Robert's pension and Social Security kept me comfortable, but I wasn't rich. I told Kevin I could give him $15,000 right away, and maybe another 5 in a few months. He went quiet again. Mom, he said slowly, that's not going to be enough. Well, honey, that's what I have. And then he said it, the sentence that cracked something inside me. What about the house? I didn't speak. Mom, the house is worth at least 350,000, maybe more. You're living there alone. It's too big for you. You could sell it, pay off my debt, and move into a nice little apartment or a senior community. It makes sense. It makes sense. 46 years of memories. Robert's last breath. My garden.
My porch.
My life. And he reduced it all to a number. It makes sense. I took a breath and said, Kevin, I'm not selling the house.
He didn't yell.
Not that night. He just said, think about it, Mom. Please. Just think about it. I said I would, but I already knew my answer. A week later, he called again. This time, Vanessa was on the line too. And the tone was different. It was harder. More aggressive. Dorothy, Vanessa said. She always called me Dorothy. Never Mom. Never even Mrs. Palmer. Just Dorothy, like I was a stranger. Dorothy, Kevin and I have been talking, and we really think selling the house is the right move. You're getting older. What if something happens to you? What if you fall? You shouldn't be alone in that big house. I said, I appreciate the concern, Vanessa, but I'm perfectly healthy. My doctor says I'm in great shape for my age. But you have to think about the family, she said. Kevin is your son. We're struggling. The kids need stability. Don't you want what's best for your grandchildren? She weaponized my grandchildren. She used Lily and Marcus like bargaining chips. And that's when the anger started. Not hot anger. Not the kind that makes you scream. The cold kind. The kind that sits in your bones and waits. Kevin jumped in. Mom, if you really loved me, you'd sell this house tomorrow. You're sitting on a fortune and watching your son drown. What kind of mother does that? What kind of mother does that? I raised that boy. I sacrificed for that boy. I went without new clothes for years, so he could have what he needed. Robert and I ate rice and beans some weeks, so Kevin could have sports equipment and school trips. And now he was questioning what kind of mother I was because I wouldn't hand over the roof above my head. I said nothing for a long time. The silence on that phone call stretched until it was almost unbearable. Then I said, very calmly, I need some time to think, Kevin. I'll call you back. And I hung up. But I wasn't thinking about whether to sell.
No.
I was thinking about something else entirely. I was thinking about what Robert would do. And Robert was the smartest, most quietly strategic man I have ever known. He never raised his voice. He never fought. But he never, ever let anyone take what was his. The next morning, I called my attorney. His name is Frank Castellano. He'd been our family lawyer for 20 years. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he said, Dorothy, I think we need to put some protections in place. I said, tell me everything. Over the next 2 weeks, Frank and I worked together. I learned things about my own legal rights that I had never fully understood. And I made moves. Quiet moves. The kind nobody sees until it's too late. First, I updated my will. Previously, Kevin was the sole beneficiary of the house and all my assets. I changed that. I set up a trust. The house would go into the trust, managed by Frank as trustee. Kevin could not sell it, could not mortgage it, could not touch it. If I passed, the house would be used to fund educational trusts for Lily and Marcus. My grandchildren would get the value of that house for college for their futures. Kevin and Vanessa would get nothing. Second, I transferred my savings into a new account that Kevin had no knowledge of and no access to. Third, and this is the part that changed everything, I did some digging. Robert had always told me to always keep records. Paper doesn't lie. So I went through Robert's old files, the ones in the metal cabinet in the basement that I hadn't opened since he died. And I found something. Robert had a life insurance policy that I had forgotten about. A second one, separate from the one that paid out after his death. This one was smaller, $50,000, and it had been set up decades ago through his union. It had matured. It was sitting in an account, untouched, waiting to be claimed. $50,000 I didn't even know I had. I claimed it, and I said nothing. 3 weeks after our phone call, Kevin showed up at my door. He didn't call first. He just appeared. Vanessa was in the car with the kids. He walked up the porch steps and said, "Mom, we need to settle this." I invited him in. I made coffee. I sat across from him at the kitchen table, the same table where he ate cereal as a little boy, where Robert helped him with homework, where we celebrated every birthday until he left for college. Kevin put a folder on the table. He had printed out real estate listings, apartments, senior communities. He had done research. He had a whole plan for where I would go after selling my home. "Look," he said, pointing at a listing. "This place is nice. It's got a community garden. You'd love it. 1 bedroom, all utilities included. It's only $1,400 a month." He had planned my eviction from my own life. I let him talk. I let him go through every listing. I let him explain how the sale would work, how we'd split the money, how he'd pay off his debt and start fresh. I watched his mouth move. I watched his hands gesture. And I felt something I had never felt toward my own son before. I felt pity. Not anger anymore. Just deep, heavy pity. Because he had become someone Robert would not recognize. When he finished, he sat back and said, "So, what do you think?" I took a sip of my coffee. Set the cup down. Looked him right in the eyes. "Kevin," I said, "I'm not selling this house." His jaw tightened. "Mom, come on. We've been through this." "Let me finish," I said. And something in my voice made him stop. Maybe it was the steadiness. Maybe it was the calm. But he stopped. "I've spoken with my attorney. The house has been placed into a trust. It cannot be sold. Not by me, not by you, not by anyone. When I die, the value of this house will go into educational funds for Lily and Marcus. For their college. For their future." His face went white. "You did what?" "I also updated my will. You are no longer the beneficiary of my estate." He stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "You can't do that." "I already did." "Mom, this is insane. You're punishing me because I asked for help." I shook my head. "No, Kevin. I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. And I'm protecting my grandchildren from growing up in a family that sees people as ATM machines." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. "You didn't come here because you missed me," I said. "You didn't call me because you wanted to hear my voice. The only reason I've heard from you in the last year is because you need money. That's not love, Kevin. That's a transaction. And I am done being your transaction." He stared at me. His eyes were wet. I don't know if it was shame or rage or some mixture of both. "And one more thing," I said. I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out a check. I placed it on the table. It was a check for $50,000.
He looked at it. Looked at me.
Confusion all over his face. "Your father had a second life insurance policy I only recently discovered. This is the payout. $50,000. I'm giving it to you. Not because you demanded it. Not because you threatened me. But because your father would have wanted to help his son, even when his son didn't deserve it." Kevin's hand trembled as he picked up the check. "I want to tell you something else. Something I haven't shared with anyone. Not Kevin. Not Frank. Not even my church group." About 2 weeks after Kevin's visit, after the check, after the silence that followed, Vanessa called me. Not Kevin. Vanessa. And she didn't know that Kevin had already apologized. She didn't know about the Sunday visit.
She called on her own.
It was 11 o'clock at night. I was in bed reading. My phone rang and I saw her name and my stomach tightened. Because nothing good ever comes from a late-night call from someone who has never once called you out of kindness. I answered.
"Dorothy," she said.
Her voice was different. Not sharp. Not cold. It was cracked. Like she had been crying for a long time before picking up the phone. "Vanessa," I said. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer right away. I heard her breathing. Heavy.
Shaky.
Then she said something I never expected to hear from her. "I'm the one who told Kevin to ask you for the house." I said nothing. He didn't want it at first. He said it was wrong. He said you'd never agree. But I pushed him. I pushed him hard. I told him if he didn't get the money, I was leaving. I told him I'd take the kids. I made him feel like he had no choice. I sat up in bed. My hand gripped the phone tighter. I was scared, Dorothy. We were drowning. The bills kept coming. The calls from collectors. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. And I looked at you in this big house, all alone, and I thought it wasn't fair. I thought you had more than you needed, and we had nothing. So I told Kevin to ask. And when you said no, I told him to push harder. She paused. I could hear her swallowing. But when he came home with that check and told me what you said, something broke inside me. Not because of the money, because of what you said about being a transaction. That word, transaction, it stayed in my head for days. And I realized that's exactly what I had become. I turned my husband against his own mother because I was desperate and angry and too proud to ask for help the right way. I let the silence sit between us for a moment. Then I said, Vanessa, why are you telling me this? Because I owe you the truth. And because Lily asked me last week why we never visit Grandma anymore. And I didn't have an answer. I had nothing to say to my own daughter. And that's when I knew I had become someone I don't want to be. I closed my eyes,
Took a deep breath.
Vanessa, I said, I'm not going to pretend you didn't hurt me. You did.
Deeply.
But I raised a son in this house with a man who believed that people deserve second chances. Not third and fourth chances, but a second one. So here's yours. Don't waste it.
She cried. Hard.
For almost a full minute. And when she finally caught her breath, she whispered, Thank you, Dorothy. I said, You can call me Mom. She broke down again. That following Sunday, Vanessa came with Kevin and the kids. She walked up the porch step slowly, like she was afraid the door might not open. But it did, because I opened it. She stood in my kitchen and looked around, and she didn't say it smelled old. She said, It smells like home.
And that was enough.
Now I'm not foolish. I didn't forget what happened. I didn't erase it. Trust is like my garden. Once you pull the roots out, it takes a long time to grow back. But I watered it.
Carefully. Slowly. And I watched.
Because that's what I do. I watch. I wait. And I decide who deserves to sit on my porch. Robert used to say, The strongest walls aren't the ones people can see. They're the ones built with patience. He was right.
He was always right.
So if you're out there listening to this, and someone in your life is making you feel small, making you feel like your only value is what you can give them, I want you to hear me. You are not a bank. You are not a backup plan. You are not a house to be sold. You are the foundation. And foundations don't move. People build their lives on you. And if they forget that, you don't crumble. You stand still. You stand strong. And you let them remember. They always remember. But Kevin, listen to me carefully. This is the last financial help you will ever receive from me. There will be no more. If you come back asking for more, the answer will be no. If Vanessa calls me with guilt trips about the grandchildren, the answer will be no. If you try to contest the trust or challenge my will, Frank Castellano will bury you in legal fees you cannot afford. I paused. I love you. I will always love you. You are my son. But I will not be disrespected in my own home. I will not be treated like a burden whose only value is the property she lives in. I am your mother. I changed your diapers. I held you when you were scared. I sat up with you every night when you had the flu as a child. And I deserve more than a folder full of apartment listings. Kevin stood there for what felt like an eternity. Then he folded the check, put it in his pocket, and walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the knob. Without turning around, he said, I'm sorry, Mom. I said, I know. He left. Vanessa didn't come inside. They drove away. That was 4 months ago. Kevin called me 2 weeks later. It was a short call. He thanked me for the money. He said he was going to use it to pay the most urgent debts and get on a payment plan for the rest. He said Vanessa, and he were going to counseling. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking. He didn't ask about the house. Last month, he brought the kids over on a Sunday. No Vanessa. Just him and Lily and Marcus. Lily is 11 now. Marcus is 8. They ran through the garden and played in the yard, and Kevin sat on the porch with me. We didn't talk much. We just sat there. And for the first time in years, it felt like my son was actually there. Not asking for anything. Not calculating my worth. Just sitting with his mother on a porch, watching the light fade. Before he left, he hugged me. And he whispered, "I don't know how Dad would feel about what I did, but I know he'd be proud of you." I held on to that hug for a long time. I still live in my house. My garden is blooming. My porch is swept. Robert's coffee mug is still on the shelf where he left it. And I sit here every morning just like we used to, and I drink my coffee and I watch the street wake up. And I am at peace. They thought I was just a lonely old woman with a house too big for her. They thought I would crumble under pressure. They thought silence meant weakness. But silence was never my weakness. It was my weapon. And if there's one thing I've learned in 74 years, it's this: never mistake a quiet woman for a weak one. She's not being silent because she has nothing to say. She's being silent because she's already 10 steps ahead of you.